Connor Murphy is back for the Blackhawks. Who's in, who's out, who will face the Florida Panthers today at noon? Join us next for the CHGO Blackhawks Pregame Show. Good morning. Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks pregame show. I'm Jay Zawaski with Mario Tirabassi. Sarah's here as well. We are in our West Loop studios, which are lemony fresh this morning.
Fresh.
It is delightful in here. The cleaning crew came through. It has not smelled this good since March of 2022. It's amazing. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it, everybody. We've seen a lot of our usual folks in the chat. We love you. Thanks for being here on this early game on Saturday. Do us a favor, hit that like button for us on the YouTube page, and be sure to subscribe to the channel as well. We're going to get right to it. Andrew Sorensen spoke early this morning, around 9:30 Chicago time. Here's what he had to say about today's matchup with the Florida Panthers.
I just want to confirm that Crevier is still in.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Krebs and Blast together. Yep.
Okay.
Any other lineup adjustments?
Peter's in net, and then Murph is returning.
Yes.
And who's he pairing with again?
He'll be with Brody.
How are you juggling that when you got all these young guys that you want to get playing time, but you also have veterans who deserve to play? How have you been managing that? How challenging has that been as a coach?
Yeah, it is, right? Because you know, it's also you deserve to play, and a lot of times with young guys too. Sometimes it's a reset, come out and come back in, right? It's a long season, and you know, some of these veteran guys that are playing well too, they deserve to stay in, or you know. So I think there's a balance there for sure, and as long as the communicate with everybody, I think it's fair.
Do you get any pushback? Do guys say like, "Hey, man, I feel like I'm playing well. Don't take me out now," or?
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to play, right? So you just, again, the communication I think is a big part of it, and where we see it, we don't always agree on everything, but this is where we see it. But yeah, they've been good though. I mean, everybody's been understandable, but everybody wants to play every day, right?
How would you assess Allen? I know his analytics aren't great, but to me it seemed like he's still pretty solid back there. How would you assess him?
Yeah, he's one of those cases that we just talked about. Like sometimes for a young guy, especially this time of the year, you hit a little bit bump. But he's been playing well. We liked his last game, but again, it's competition for spots, and Murph coming back, so someone had to come out. But had a good conversation with him yesterday, and he'll be ready to go again.
Seems like when these guys come back, there's usually an adjustment period. Is that particularly the case with defensemen?
Yeah, good question. I think everybody's a little different. It's kind of case by case, right? I think, especially a guy like Murph that's been around a little bit, probably, easier adjustment. But I think it's he'll be ready. But I think it's case by case.
Panthers are an interesting team. They're kind of like the way the Hawks used to be, where like they'll have weeks where they're just kind of cruising because they know it doesn't matter that much in the regular season, and then they can just flip a switch and they're the Stanley Cup champions again. How do you prepare for a team that kind of is a little Jekyll and Hyde that way?
That's a good question. I'm not, we'll see what they have today, right? But, I mean, we are focusing on our game too. Obviously we have to meet our own standards first of all, and then, whatever the opponent does, so to speak, we can't control that, but we can control what we're doing. So for us, it's looking for a good start here, kind of getting the first 5 minutes, getting going right off the hop is going to be important here.
It's possible I asked you this yesterday, but Martinez said that you were working on kind of picking pucks up off the walls and breaking them out, and what has been the emphasis or the teaching points with that?
Teams today seem a lot of teams like Florida does a lot, Carolina does a hard rims, so the pucks are coming on the yellow or up on the wall. So as a defenseman, you're under a lot of pressure there, so you got to, just working on that little foundation and fundamentals of doing that under pressure is important. And also for us to be connected and knowing where our outlets are is an important part of it.
He said that there's more, you're working on the communication, knowing where the forwards are. Where do you want the forwards to be ideally?
hoping.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's different. I mean, we want support. We want some later supports. You know, we want to, again, knowing where their outs are all the time is an important part of it. So biggest thing is you want to stay connected, right? So if you're watching the TV screen, you want to see 5 guys in the picture. That's usually when we're at our best.
There he is, Anders Sorensen. Thanks to the Blackhawks for use of that video. That was, again, from earlier this morning. So here are your forward and defensive pairs. Bedard centering Nazar and Bertuzzi. Dickinson with Teravainen and Mikheyev. Donato, Slaggert, Foligno, Reichel, Doc, and Maroon. Your D pairs are Martinez and Jones. Vlasic and Crevier, Brody and Murphy. Peter Mrazek in goal. So the 9 guys under 23.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Yeah, I think there are 23
yet,
men on the
least.
roster right now.
Yeah, with Murphy being activated, they're up to 23, and that's the limit.
And if Craig Smith is close, someone's going down. So, look, I know it's frustrating. We are all longing for the young team. I think it's coming eventually. But I heard, I don't remember who Elliot Friedman was referring to the other day, but someone on the trade block was scratched, and he was sort of saying, well, that's not a way to get a guy any trade interest if he's not playing.
Yeah, right.
Teams notice healthy scratch, and are not really willing to trade for that. So this could be a bit of a showcasing, hoping that some of these veterans show up and put up good numbers. If you're on the team, trade Seth Jones. He's been playing great lately, and he's probably never had more value as a Hawk than he does right now. So I don't know. I hope if there's a reason this is happening, I'm hoping that's it. At the same time, Kyle Davison has not been the type to meddle in lineup construction, so maybe this is just what Anders thinks is best. And look, if you're trying to win every game, maybe go more veteran. But I'm here for the kids. Let's go. It's time.
Yeah, I mean it's clearly the expectation for the spot Connor Murphy plays is in the lineup. I think he's good enough to be one of the better 6 defensemen on this team. Even if we are saying like play the young guys and stuff, I look to Connor Murphy and be like, yeah, caveat, when he's healthy,
right,
he is worthy of being the number 4 or number 5 defenseman on this team. And I don't think that that's really, causing any ruckus there. But it's his first game back from a hip injury that he's continuously been dealing with over the last 2 seasons. And it's not an easy one. Osteus pubis or something is what it's called.
Yes.
It's a just quick little info on it. It's an inflammation within your hips.
Osteitis pubis.
Yeah, there you go.
A groin issue involving inflammation within the joint connecting the left and right pubic bones.
Yeah, so right down the middle there.
Yeah, sounds not great.
And that's a section of your body that as a NHL player needs to feel the best because a lot of movement goes on in your legs and your hips. So, yeah, I mean, it's hopefully it's something that he can come back from and play at a high level with. But that we'll see what he looks like coming back. This is his first game back, first game since he's played in the Winter Classic. So missed a full month officially since today's February 1st. I have to keep reminding myself. So I get getting Murphy in there. TJ Brody, I think his body of work this season, I would say I've seen enough. His last 2 games since his last scratch have been better than his average this year. So you look at that and you say, okay, he's been okay. But still, the scratching of Nolan Allen and Ethan Del Mastro, it's not what we want as fans because
certainly not.
I think a lot of people, most people, almost all of fans would say play as many young guys as you can because that's what's important.
Well, look, I get it. This is, when you bring in a bunch of veteran players in the preseason, these are the problems you're going to run into. And I think that, when Kyle Davidson spoke on Monday, he said, like, maybe Frank's arrival came a little faster. Frank Nazar's arrival came a little faster than expected. So there's a rough, and you can't hold him down. So, but maybe he was thinking trade deadline or now instead of 20-some games ago. Mm-hmm. But you got veteran guys here. They're going to play. Like, it's not realistically, there's not a lot of GMs or coaches in the league that are going to look at these guys who have been in the league for 7 to 10 years and say, you're sitting every night so we can play these kids. Now, what they will say is, we're going to play you. We want to play these young guys, so we're going to do our best to move you out of here and put you in a situation you want to be in.
Yeah.
It's up to them if they want to go. Sounds like that's the case with Martinez and Maroon based on what Scott Powers and others have reported. But those opportunities are going to come. They're definitely going young next year. That's Taylor Hall said so, and he didn't just say it out of nothing. He's got some insight on that based on conversations with the agent and Kyle Davidson.
Yeah, and that's the direction I believe that they should go. So I think, this Four Nations face-off tournament, which, by the way, we'll be doing post-game shows for all Team USA games and the final, which will also be a Team USA game.
Exactly.
That has created kind of two trade deadlines leading up to the beginning of the tournament, and then the one that is officially March 7th.
Yeah.
So there's a trade going on right now between Dallas and San Jose, and so we've seen these the trade last night. Like, we've seen these moves being made, and I think it's maybe accelerated a little bit of those talks for some guys about like what they want to do, and maybe Pat Maroon and Alec Martinez are guys that those discussions are a little bit more intensified now rather than at the end of February leading up to the trade deadline. So it could accelerate things. I think those potential moves being made, those roster spots being opened, again, like you're saying, like could have, in Davidson's mind, could have been a little bit more ahead of time, but I still believe that they are coming eventually, at least another one or two NHL moves where roster spots open up. And I think for the most part, you're going to see young guys take those spots, and depends on the moves. I know we kind of talked about maybe the Blackhawks add a veteran at leading up to the trade deadline, that those, whispers and murmurs are out there, but I think for the most part, I would be willing to say that any roster spot that's open from now to the end of the year is going to be filled by someone who is considered a young player or a prospect.
Yeah, I hope so, unless it is with the caveat that if it's a veteran that's going to be a superstar top-line player that's going to be here for the next 5 to 7 years, that's different. If you're going to try to acquire your Elias Pettersson or whoever it might be, I'm down for that, but in terms of just...
Who might still get traded.
Right. Just instead of just trying to make the NHL roster better for today, I'm not down with that. By the way, Pierre LeBrun has that trade finalized. It's Cody Ceci and Michael Granlund to the Dallas Stars for a 2025 first and a 2025 fourth. If Dallas makes the Cup final, it will upgrade to a 2025 third instead. So Dallas giving up a first and potentially third for Cody Ceci and Michael Granlund. That's a go-for-it move. I think Cece's a little bit of an undervalued player, especially a leadership type. And Michael Granlund is having an incredible year with San Jose. Yeah. I think it was
45 points this year.
Yeah, he's been really, really good. So obviously won't have as big of a role on Dallas, but depth.
But you have a guy that is going from leading a team offensively in productions, or at least at the top, off the top of my head, I believe. And he's had some pretty decent seasons in the past. We were kind of looking up his numbers, a couple 60-point seasons in the last handful of years. Like, he's a guy that I think not a lot of people give a lot of respect to, because they just really don't pay attention to him all that much, because he's played for Minnesota, Nashville, and San Jose in his time in the NHL. So it's like he's never really been on an elite team, but now he's getting an opportunity to go and play like that depth role. Kind of, it reminds me a little bit of like Antoine Vermette in 2015. Yeah. Like, he was a guy that played a really important role for the Coyotes for almost his entire career. And then when he came to Chicago, it was just like, well, yeah, we need you to be like the third line center, PK guy, and chip in when you need to. So Granlund could be that guy for the Stars. And CC, I think, comes in and gives them some depth while Miro Heiskanen is out with his injury. And there was, some chatter about the Stars and Seth Jones maybe being a match. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're out of that, but I think if Heiskanen goes down, you bring in a guy like Cody Ceci. Heiskanen is not out for the year. He's not out for the remainder of, he's not out till June, July. He's going to miss a few weeks, but he'll still come back. it seems like Cody Ceci can be like that Band-Aid in the meantime for them.
Definitely. Hey, we want to tell you about our ongoing sale at the store.allcitynetwork.com. Our postseason clearance sale up to 75% off. Our merch, 20% off the entire store. This ends Sunday at 11 p.m. Central. So take advantage at allchgo.com or go to store.allcitynetwork.com. Everything is on sale, 20%. You can save up to 75% on clearance items. So check it out. Take stock up before this sale is over. Very easy to do. Store.allcitynetwork.com.
A lot of great designs out there.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. So jump on that. It feels like a lot to give up for Dallas, but when you're a contender, a first-round pick is the Hawks gave up a first for Vermette, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's if you win a Stanley Cup, it's worth it.
And I believe that first-round pick was Nick Merkley, I think, for the Coyotes.
That sounds right.
Might have been something like that.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
It turned into somebody who, didn't really do anything. And those late first-round picks,
that's what they are
for a chance at a Stanley Cup. Like, you'll give that up.
Yeah, it's not like a top 10. And even last night, the JT Miller trade was what, top 15 protected?
Top 13, I think.
13, yeah. So that is a mindful trade of, hey, like, no, you're not getting. There's a vast value difference. We were just talking about this the other day from a top 10, top 15 first round pick and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. It's different kind of prospects. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm surprised by how active the trade market has been.
Well, there is a roster freeze for the Four Nations coming up. I was trying to look up when the actual date is, but I mean the tournament starts or the schedule freezes. I think the 9th or 10th of upcoming here. Well, the 10th is the Super Bowl, so I think there's no games on that day anyway. So I think the 9th is the last day of regular season games before the pause. So I'd imagine the roster freeze happens at around that same time. So yeah, I mean, it kind of created a pseudo trade deadline for some of these teams because the tournament ends the 20th, I want to say, and then you start up games 2 weeks before the trade deadline.
Yeah, then it's going to get. Things are going to pick up.
Yeah, if all these trades had waited till then you have no idea where some of these teams might be health-wise. Some guys, knock on wood, for all 32 teams out there, somebody's probably going to get hurt in this tournament. Like, it's somebody who's there is probably going to get hurt, and it could be a guy that for some team is either a trade piece or someone people were looking to acquire. It's possible. So, some of these teams might be looking at, like, let's make our move now before and then see where our chips lay after the tournament.
The last day of games, by the way, February 9th.
Yeah.
There's 2 games that day, and then the 10th is where it starts. And then the actual tournament begins on the 12th when Canada and Sweden play. The first U.S. game is Tuesday the 13th, USA versus Finland. That's at 6 o'clock. And like we said earlier, that'll be a post-game show.
Yeah, we're going to treat that as a post-game show.
Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Mrazek back in goal today. Not a huge surprise. You got to get him in, but if it is 2 out of every 3 for Soderblom at this point, I'll take that. I think his last 2 games have been really, really good. I hope Mrazek has a solid performance in this one because over the last few, it's not been crazy impressive.
No, it hasn't been the Mrazek that we saw earlier in the season or that we saw last season. I think he's kind of come back down to maybe what I think a lot of people expect out of him, and hopefully it can be a little bit better today, but it's going to be tough. This Panthers team is fast, hard to play against, shoots a lot, physical, gets in the way, suppresses shots pretty well. Like, this is going to be a tough matchup for the Blackhawks, but the last time that they played in Florida on the road, they won. So who knows? Maybe there's something in the orange juice down there that helps the Blackhawks.
They've beat them this year too.
Yeah, so they beat them 3-1 earlier in November. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's a lot of things have to go right for the Blackhawks to have a chance. And as I think Mark Lazarus was the one that asked Andrew Sorensen in the pregame about, sometimes this Panthers team can feel like the old Blackhawks teams where they coast until the spring, and then they flip a switch and they become, the Stanley Cup contending type of team and play that way. How do you prepare for that? And I mean, Anders' message was we focus on our game, and that's true. But you also have to come into this and say, well, it's still the Panthers. Even if it is a off day for the Panthers, they're better than you. So you have you have to prepare for their best, and then if they end up taking you lightly and you get up for the game, then like we've seen a lot of times this year where the Blackhawks play teams that are in the playoff picture or Stanley Cup contenders, they play well against them. And maybe they get a result today.
I think it is partially they understand that, first of all, it's probably a little bit of fear that if we don't play perfect, we're going to get our asses kicked. We don't want that. But it's like they know they got to simplify it. They can't, you can't skate circles around the Panthers or the Oilers or whoever it might be.
And that was the problem against Carolina.
Somehow they didn't get that message until late.
Right, yeah. Take that third period effort into this game.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing it. By the way, speaking of the Florida Panthers, old friend Adam Boquist will not play for the Panthers today. He was waived and claimed by the New York Islanders yesterday. So that Seth Jones trade is starting to look a little more Hawks heavy on that deal.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I feel bad for Boquist a little bit just because he's kind of gotten some raw deals. I think, he was rushed here in Chicago. I don't think he's a terrible defenseman. I think he is what he is. He's the Eric Gustafsson. Like he's an offensive guy, not really going to give you much defensively. If you play him as a third pair offensive guy, like he should be fine. But when you're playing for the Panthers, it's hard to be that type of player and play on the NHL roster. So
the crazy thing is, he is still only 24.
Right. Yeah.
Like
he's been playing in the NHL for 6 years. Basically.
I know he's played 227 NHL games.
Yeah.
91 points in those games. You wonder, I doubt it, but you wonder if this is another Gustav Forsling situation where on team number 3, figures things out, gets it. I mean, if you can't figure it out in Florida, though, with some of the best coaching and some of the best team building around.
But he wasn't playing in the NHL a lot in Florida.
It's it'll be interesting. You're right, because we saw when he was here, there were those occasional flashes of, oh, look at that. Like that is elite offensive defending. Again, he'll never be a shutdown guy, but I don't know. I wonder if he figures it out. Always a nice kid. I always enjoyed talking to him. He was kind of short in his thoughts, but seemed like a nice guy who was happy to be here. But an 8th overall pick in 2018 on his third team.
1 pick after Quinn Hughes and 2 picks ahead of Evan Bouchard.
Yeah.
Darn.
They should fire that GM.
Yeah, they should. That guy should never run another team.
Actually, he resigned.
Yeah. Technically, sure.
Pat Maroon back in the lineup too.
I'm okay with
that. I'm glad Doc is not sitting, at least.
I'm glad Frank Nazar is not sitting. I know he did not have one of his best games against Carolina. But I think one not so great game is not necessarily enough to be like hit the reset button on Frank Nazar. I think he's been playing pretty well as a whole for the time that he's come up here, and I think you still want that Bertuzzi, Bedard, Nazar line to keep clicking. I think Bedard and Bertuzzi still have that chemistry going. Like I don't think it's fizzled out at all. So yeah, I'm glad that he's still playing. And same thing with Doc. And it's interesting that they flipped Reichel and Donato on those third and fourth lines, but Reichel with Doc and Maroon, I think the way that Maroon and Reichel have played well together this year, throw Doc in the mix, like I think that can work.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the Smith Reichel Maroon line.
A little bit, yeah.
Doc and him are similar players at this point in Doc's career. So, and I also think too, any fears Nazar had of being scratched, I'm sure he was not happy to see Philip Kurashev fall down and turn the puck over at the blue line, but it gave Anders Sorensen another guy to scratch in his favor. I think that Nazar probably immediately received that message after not taking that shot, actually a couple times in that game, got demoted, got put on the third line temporarily, and it doesn't have to be a game punishment. He is still one of your most effective offensive players. You don't take him out because he had a bad moment or two, because join the club. The
Right.
entire team had several bad moments in that game.
Right.
So I would be a little irritated if Nazar was scratched for that. Kurashev, it's been habitual with him where the performances haven't been good. The mental lapses have been there. And that one where Connor Bedard puts a drop pass right to him, things barely moving. He catches it in full stride and then just falls down in the they're off the other way. That's a pretty easy move if you have to scratch a younger player.
Yeah.
To have it be Kurashev.
Yeah, I think he's kind of gotten into that tweener space where it's just like he's not really a prospect, he's not really a young guy, not really carving his way into the future, kind of carved his way out of the future after last season. So yeah, it's he feels like the new Joey Anderson, where it's just like you put him in, he might play well, but he might play bad, and if he doesn't play well, then you take him out.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
But I'll say with Anderson, though, like, there's never much of a threat to score, but he was never much of a threat to hurt you either.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't need to see him back in Chicago anytime.
No, I think he's going to stay in.
Yeah, I'd rather, at least if you're going to keep Kurashev around, when you're in that situation where someone up front needs a rest, he goes in, see if you can squeeze anything out of him.
Right. And
maybe there's some team that sees him as a reclamation project based on what he did last year. Maybe, I don't know. I think his time in Chicago is numbered, but I don't think his time in the NHL is numbered. I don't know. Maybe he could be, as we look ahead to the trade deadline, a little bit of a sweetener for somebody. I'm not sure.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I mean, but if you're throwing in a guy who's been in and out of the lineup as a sweetener, like his cap hit's a little high for being that kind of sweetener at 2.5, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think if a team is taking on a $2.5 million contract and they're trying to improve and they're likely a team that's not playing with a lot of salary cap money, you don't want to take on 2.5 as like a maybe. Like, I don't. Crazier things have happened.
Yeah, it could be an off-season thing too. You know.
Well, he's
RFA,
right?
Yeah.
He seems like someone that they walk.
They're just gonna let him walk, right?
I think so.
I mean, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
You got.
I think there's
many guys.
There's guys coming up that are going to be better than Kurashev.
Yeah.
And he would need to be at 25, going to be 26 by next season. Like he would have to be at a point in his career where it's just like you are an everyday NHL contributor and you're not just out there taking up a roster spot. You're actually like pushing this team forward, and he's not.
And if he's not doing it here now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a change of scenery thing. It could be, a guy that plays better with better players around him. But I think last year was the symptom of somebody has to put up points, and it was Philip Kurashev's turn.
All right, we'll see how this game goes. We'll be with you for the post-game show, of course, as we always are. Want to give everybody a heads up, by the way, if you are a wrestling fan, Big Dave and Greg recorded CHGO Wrestling, thank you. That's the word. Royal Rumble was the word I'm looking for. Preview, that's tonight, the Royal Rumble. So if you're into that, once the game ends, watch us, then throw on the Royal Rumble preview. It's good stuff, so make sure you check that out. That's available on our YouTube page, and all of our socials have posted it as well, including Greg's, so you want to check that out. And like I said, we'll be back after the Hawks and Panthers wrap up in Sunrise. We'll talk to you then on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.